Paul Davy.
Starving his people.
These are Romanians' people money.
He sold weapons of war while preaching peace.
They didn't want the world to know, the banks know.
Lyndon McIntyre traces the hunt for a dictator's secret treasure and the betrayal of a people's revolution.
At first, Nicolae Ceausescu, who ruled Romania without interference for over 20 years, seems not to know his era is ending and that his life will end with it. The dictator flees, his headquarters suddenly under siege by the people. With his wife and bodyguards, he heads for the roof and a waiting helicopter. The crowd storms the building. The elevator stalls. They call for help. Somebody has cut the power. 3 floors below, demonstrators swarm into the building. The fugitives break out and scramble to the roof, steps ahead of their pursuers. The overloaded helicopter lifts off, but there's really no safe place to go. Christmas Day, the dictator is a prisoner of his own army in the town of Târgovista, not far from Bucharest. In a small schoolroom, he and his wife go on trial before a special military tribunal. Watching the proceedings are 2 observers who will figure prominently in the new Romanian power structure: Securitate Colonel Virgil Magureanu and Army General Victor Stanculescu. While Ceausescu denounces his accusers, they accuse him of killing thousands of his own people and of hiding a secret hoard of cash in Switzerland.
Contul de peste 400.000 de dolari.
400 de milioane
de dolari din Elveția.
Ce cont?
Pe numele cui este și cui aparține?
Ce cont?
Ce cont?
Ce cont?
Contul de 400 de milioane de dolari depuse la băncile din Elveția.
Elena Ceausescu demands proof. Ceausescu warns her. On this subject, it's best to say nothing. The trial lasts 55 minutes.
Ceausescu Nicolae și Ceausescu Elena la pedeapsa capitală și confiscarea totală.
It takes 5 minutes to reach a verdict.
Nu mai trage nimeni. Ridică, mai sus capul.
It's been almost 2 years since the swift and savage executions of Nicolae and Elena Ceausescu, and there's a widespread belief today that the executions were part of a sinister plot. That plot prevented a more conventional trial from taking place, a trial that might have been embarrassing to key members of the new regime, especially on the puzzling question of the Ceausescu's private wealth. Tonight, in a full edition program, we will take you on a search for that wealth, a search for evil's fortune. You will meet people who, for the first time, will explain how Ceausescu accumulated his extraordinary riches. And we'll examine the effort to get it back, an effort that's generating more controversy than cash. It was once called the Forbidden City. Now it's just part of the Bucharest bus tour for visitors. People peer through the fences and hedges around the villas and palaces that were once home to the Ceausescus. There were 40 of them in different parts of the country. And they're not just of interest to curious tourists. The locals are particularly fond of what they once called Paladul Primaveri, the Spring Palace. Here you get a measure of the ego and the appetite for ostentatious luxury that marked the peculiar personalities of the Ceausescus, evidence that absolute power had made them absolutely wealthy. And it was here the revolutionaries came first to begin repossessing the loot, the 40 fur coats, the jewelry, the designer shotguns. They repossessed just about anything that wasn't too heavy to lift. They also found an extraordinary archive of home movies. Ceausescu being romantic in his garden, being rakish on his yacht, lavish at his table. Nothing unusual for a modern political leader, but in socialist Romania it was profoundly decadent. It took a lot of money to accommodate the appetite for comfort and the delusions of greatness he shared with hangers-on like his alcoholic son Nicu and his daughter Zoya. They seemed unaware that outside the warm family circle, Romania had slipped into an angry poverty, that Romania had been crippled by a disastrous combination of personal greed and bizarre policies. In December 1989, the people were in revolt. Then they celebrated the death of the dictator, cheering the new leaders whose promises included the recovery of his private hoard of money. Dimitri Mazilu was vice president in the new government. He felt his mandate was clear and urgent.
Romanian people ask us to do everything possible, to tell to them the truth about the wealth of old Communist Party, first, and secondly, about the Ceausescu money.
From the start, it was clear that the search for Ceausescu's money wasn't going to be easy. He and his advisors had installed a complex system which diverted most of the national wealth through their hands. How much did they pocket? Estimates range between 400 million and $5 billion. How to find it? A big assignment. So a Romanian delegation came here to Toronto, to Bay Street, where they consulted with a couple of the best financial detectives in the world. Robert Lindquist is a forensic accountant. Rod Stamler is a former assistant commissioner of the RCMP, a specialist in white-collar crime. The first challenge was to figure out how the Ceausescu money machine worked.
First of all, I think it was important to determine the kind of system that a person like Nicolae Ceausescu would put into place to move funds, let's say, for his own personal benefit outside the country. We have to recognize that we're looking at a well-established communist, a well-established dictator. At the same time, we were looking at a person who loved to possess things.
Possess things and shoot things, and always to control, whether a hunting party or the national economy. In his own mind, he never missed. Rumor had it the woods were full of sharpshooters to make sure that when he shot, something always died. And the bigger they came, the harder they fell. He particularly liked to shoot bears, and when he complained that Romanian bears weren't big enough, he brought some in, from Canada. He was surrounded by people who were eager to keep him confident in his own power and to share its benefits. And it wasn't just on the hunt. Behind these walls, the Department of the Interior, controllers for the infamous Securitate, his eyes and ears, but also his businessmen and bankers. Much of what we now know about Ceausescu's finances comes from a former lieutenant colonel in the Securitate now living in Washington, Liviu Turciu, for 10 years an operative inside the system. This is the first time he's spoken publicly about the money deals.
He saw himself as a unique leader which has the capacity to impose himself on international stage as one of the greatest leaders of this century. For this, he started even during 60s to prepare a very complex but carefully prepared plan.
Ceausescu started small when his tastes were simpler, extorting inheritances from expatriate Romanians. Then he discovered a potential windfall. Jews, tens of thousands of them, wanted out. He reckoned that if they wanted it badly enough, they or somebody would pay. This man, Moses Rosen, chief rabbi of Romania, negotiated deals that allowed 400,000 Romanian Jews to move to Israel. In return, he used his influence to win Western and Israeli favors for Ceausescu. He now rejects critics who say he made deals with the devil.
I didn't make any deal with the devil. I'm not Faust. And Faust sold his soul. If I had the possibility to save 400,000 Jews, and I saved them, and I will have tomorrow again this possibility, I will do the same thing.
According to Israeli intelligence sources, the Israeli government and Jewish organizations paid Ceausescu at least $60 million in cash in return for Jewish exit visas during the 70s and 80s.
It was a successful experience, let's call it so, in Ceausescu's eyes. So he decided that he can do it in a very similar way with the German minority in Romania, and could be even more profitable.
Today, this graveyard is about the only place you'll find evidence of the German presence that once defined the town of Perium in western Romania. Now only a few remain to look after it. And they try to preserve the Church of St. Mary, where Susanna Reichter was baptized into a thriving German community, a community which in the past 20 years has all but vanished, leaving the church at the mercy of vandals and the weather and the Romanians who are now in the majority here.
When this was a German village, the church was full. Now I don't know what will happen. There is so little money. All the young people have gone. Only the old are left.
The exodus of Romanian Germans took place in a classic cloak and dagger operation. For 22 years, a German lawyer shuttled secretly between Western Europe and Bucharest. In at least 200 covert meetings, he orchestrated the exchange of 200,000 Romanian Germans for Western currency paid by the West German government. It earned the Ceausescu regime up to $1 billion. We went to the town of Neuss, near Bonn, where we found the lawyer who negotiated for Germany. The lawyer's name is Dr. Heinz Gunther Husch. He's never before been identified with the Romanian operation, an operation which the Bonn government still officially denies.
Why was this project so sensitive and so secret?
Because Ceausescu, he didn't like to let it know.
That he was selling his citizens?
He was selling his citizens and getting money.
The generally accepted figure is 10 to 15,000 Deutschmarks per head. Is it high or low?
No comment.
You can't talk about money.
I don't like to talk. I can, but I don't like.
Why? What is so sensitive about the money?
No, it is a secret agreement, and the secret is still going on.
But there was more to the secret agreement than even Dr. Hirsch bargained for. Individuals like Manfred Engelmann had to pay Romanian officials additional large sums of money. In 1973, his family paid the equivalent of $75,000 to get out of Romania.
The Romanians had a saying that it was better to breed Germans than pigs because Germans brought in more foreign currency. One cannot speak of communism in the case of Romania. It would be better to call it corruptionism. Anyone who wanted to live in freedom had to pay.
When we come back, Ceausescu's greed expands as his global ambitions take off, and the West helps him to amass a fortune.
Introducing. The armed forces of the Soviet Union have crossed the borders of the Czechoslovakian Socialist Republic.
In August 1968, a dark cloud rolled over Eastern Europe. But it was a dark cloud with a shiny lining for Nicolae Ceausescu. From Bucharest, he had the gall to criticize the Soviet-led intervention in Czechoslovakia. Perhaps the Soviets didn't notice. Perhaps they didn't care. But the West rejoiced at this crack in Eastern solidarity. Suddenly, he was the toast of the democratic world. Western leaders wanted him to come and visit, and they wanted to visit him. One of the first was Richard Nixon.
This is an historic occasion. It is the first visit of a President of the United States to Romania. Romano-Americano.
Entertaining on that scale costs big bucks, but Ceausescu was determined to play on the world stage no matter what the cost. China, also at odds with Moscow, welcomed Ceausescu warmly. Almost overnight, the farm boy from Scornacesti was a citizen of the world. Citizen of the world? Why, he even became an honorary citizen of Disneyland. Eventually, he got to Ottawa. Somewhere along the way, he seemed to lose perspective. Flattered by one superpower for standing up to another, he got the notion that Romania was a superpower too, and he was a super statesman.
Ne pronunțăm împotriva războiului pentru dezarmare și, în primul rând, pentru dezarmarea nucleară.
But war, not peace, provided one of the best opportunities for financing his global ambitions. Iraq provided the war. Romania just happened to have a well-oiled arms industry and a talent for secret deals. February 18th, 1982, Geneva. A famous international arms dealer arrived at Hotel de Rhone, shopping for rockets for Saddam Hussein. There he met a well-connected intermediary who told him he might be able to get a deal on the rockets in Romania. The arms dealer was Beirut-born Sarkis Saganelian.
I heard about a deal involving 40,000 Katyusha rockets or Stalin organ rockets.
Yes.
That was your deal.
Yes.
How did that work?
70,000.
70,000. $1,600 a piece or something like that.
Yeah, they dropped the price down to 16. It was 19 first.
After a night of negotiating, they had a draft deal. Sarkis contacted the hangar at Geneva Airport, where he kept his customized Boeing 707 aircraft. Then he and the intermediary headed off to Bucharest to put the finishing touches on the deal. In the final contract, the Romanians insisted on being paid in cash as each plane load of rockets was delivered, a total of $112 million.
So the crew will take that money and up unloading the aircraft, they pay, they leave.
How is that? Like literally money in bags?
Yeah.
Why would they want cash instead of the usual letter of credit?
They didn't want the world know, the banks know what was happening, what they were selling.
This is one of the most sensitive neighborhoods in Bucharest. There's a military base and the offices of a company called Romtechnica, the trading company through which Ceausescu ran a large part of a $4 billion arms trade during the 80s. They sold everything from small arms to rockets, and for one of his most bizarre deals, Ceausescu made good use of his high-level admirers in Washington. By 1984, Watergate was just a bad memory for the former U.S. Attorney General John Mitchell, but he had to earn a living. So he jumped at a scheme to sell new military uniforms to Saddam Hussein for $181 million.
It was my suggestion to the Minister of Defense of Iraq saying that let's change the image of the military a little bit. Let's change their uniform, make them look like, you know, tough guys and things like that. Let's give them, make them like a Marine Corps.
Mitchell contacted his old boss, Richard Nixon, who he knew was a pal of Nicolae Ceausescu. Nixon and Ceausescu, after all, had a common dedication to world peace. And what could be more important to peace than the morale and the self-image of Saddam and his soldiers? At first, the soldiers were excited enough about getting new uniforms, but Saddam's enthusiasm died quickly.
When we got the stuff, the supply, everybody was disappointed. They said, Sarkis, look what we got here. I went to inspect it, I was astonished. He said, a truckload of uniform from Romania to Baghdad. He said, we could buy this shit for 75 cents. We're paying $3.25. It was a fiasco.
Fiasco or not, the Iraqis paid, and Nixon wrote to Ceausescu praising the fine Romanian workmanship. Mircea Raceanu was a senior Washington-based Romanian diplomat under Ceausescu.
Really what he believed that, as he said to somebody, that Romanian people was lucky that have him as a leader, because a man like him was born once in 500 years.
By 1984, the 40th anniversary of communism in Romania, the former shoemaker's apprentice had come to believe his own mythology. He liked to be called genius of the Carpathians. Naturally, what was good for him was good for Romania. He was also called El Conductore, the conductor, and increasingly he orchestrated the resources of his country for his own glorification and that of his wife, Elena, a bumpkin with grade 4 education who collected academic titles the way Imelda Marcos collected shoes.
She wanted titles in order to create an image that you have in front of you a scientist, a highly sophisticated human being, and at the same time she wanted sophisticated clothes and everything, which she thought always will project an image of a strong, sophisticated woman, which she never was, as a matter of fact.
But her power was second only to his own, and her official trips enabled her to indulge a fondness for fur, jewelry, gold, and video games. But while Elena fed her vanity, her husband had bigger things in mind. He'd run up a $10 billion debt trying to industrialize a largely agricultural economy during the 70s. In the early 80s, he decided to impress the world by repaying the debt.
The Romanian people was without food, without electricity, without anything. No consumer goods, anything. The industry was in a very bad situation. So the question is, you repaid the debt, and what was left? And that was left the poorest almost country in Europe.
But the growing poverty didn't restrain his fantasies, Consider this monument to megalomania, the House of the Republic, almost the largest building in the world, second only to the Pentagon, 2,400 rooms. He flattened the homes of 50,000 people to build it, and he used so much marble there was a shortage of tombstones for several years. He saw himself as an emperor, even acquired a jeweled scepter and mace. The hunger for adulation at home and abroad meant a sharp increase in his appetite for hard currency, so he turned to the group he trusted most, the Securitate. Former Securitate officer Liviu Turciu.
It's the period of time where the Romanian intelligence service, using a special compartment, a special department, in fact, started to conduct a number of operations, financial, commercial, and other kinds of operations. We are talking about hundreds of millions of dollars.
This is the port of Constanța on the Black Sea, Romania's main trading link with the world. Nothing moved in or out of this port without Ceausescu taking a cut, a rake-off that went straight into his special accounts. Toronto accountant Bob Lindquist had no trouble recognizing a scheme that he'd seen before in Canada. It sounds like the old toll-gating system that we're familiar with in Canadian politics.
It's applicable. It's giving yourself a slice. Sometimes, you know, the word grease or the word toll-gating, whatever, may imply a small percentage, and that's not necessarily the case here.
It was a remarkably easy system to implement. Romania's trade was conducted by a series of state-owned companies, almost all of which were ultimately responsible to Ceausescu. But he wanted more, so he created Dunărea. Any foreigner who did business in Romania had to work through companies like Dunărea. Daniel Cotton represented a major British trading firm in Romania for 3 years.
Well, yes, essentially most of the foreign community knew, for example, that Dunărea, as one such company, was trading in arms, was raising money for the Securitate. But we used to do business with Dunărea because they had a legitimate facade.
Working from these modest quarters, Dunărea did an estimated $4.4 billion worth of business during the 80s. But for the Securitate, success just meant more pressure from Ceausescu.
After the first year, when Ceausescu was reported that Dunărea made lots of money, he automatically, in his own style, doubled the figure for the next year.
As Ceausescu's appetite for hard currency grew, the Securitate invented new money-making schemes, including a contract to remove toxic chemical waste from Italy for disposal in Romania. The catch was that they had no way of disposing of it, so they stored it. And when people started getting sick, they simply dumped it in the Black Sea.
What in reality Romanian intelligence service did whenever it was necessary, working like mafia, behind the law, no matter if it was Romanian law, European laws, or international laws.
There's evidence he actually envied the real mafia and once asked the Securitate to open talks about possible joint ventures. The mafia turned him down. Unlike Western politicians, they didn't trust him.
It seems that the results were not quite encouraging for them in being part of such transactions with Romanians.
The money earmarked for Ceausescu's pet projects eventually found its way into a special compartment at the Romanian Bank for Foreign Trade. Within this secret compartment, he had his own trusted team of money handlers who worked closely with the Securitate, answerable, ultimately, to Ceausescu himself.
Ceausescu was the person who knew everything. He was like, from this point, having 100% control. He knew exactly what amount of money entered into account and what amount of money were pulled out from those accounts.
Some of the money was held in the Romanian bank for Ceausescu's personal needs, but large amounts were transferred abroad.
The biggest part of the money were just disappeared, and disappeared in Ceausescu's direction.
Much of the Ceausescu money actually disappeared into Swiss bank accounts through the use of paper companies and phony names. Investigators have actually identified the two top men in charge of the special banking system. It should have been relatively simple to proceed from there to the loot. For some reason, they never did. In Bucharest, Romania's Bank for Foreign Trade shut down the secret compartment, but major questions about the money Ceausescu laundered there remain unanswered. The two men who managed the secret accounts in that bank vanished shortly after the official corruption investigation started. Shortly after that, the government seemed to lose interest in them. Now, when anybody asks about their whereabouts, the response is that it's a subject better left alone. So whatever happened to them and to the money in those secret accounts now remains a mystery. When we come back, investigators believe a part of Ceausescu's money machine survived him. We'll examine new evidence and talk to his executioners about his missing millions.
Vino, Doamne, să vezi ce-a mai rămas din oameni.
About 600 Romanians died getting rid of Ceausescu. They were mostly young, workers and students. The youngest was 14. Those who survived are still waiting for answers to disturbing questions. The former Vice President, Dumitru Mizilu, now lives in exile in Switzerland. The question he's most anxious to have answered concerns Ceausescu's money.
These are Romania's people money. This money were stolen by Ceausescu family. This money should be back to Romanian people.
That's what Rod Stamler and Bob Lindquist believed they were hired to do. A year ago, they thought they were closing in on what seemed to be a cleverly hidden system from the old Ceausescu money-making apparatus, and it was still operating.
And we found that one system emerged at the key point in time, grew, developed, and operated in such a way that he would not be identified as the recipient of the profits from that. It had to have top-level inside Romania direction, and it could not have operated the way it did without the personal intervention of Nicolae Ceausescu.
Our research has turned up a company called Crescent, a private trading company with a difference, registered outside Romania but doing most of its business from Bucharest. For almost 10 years, Crescent has wheeled and dealed in Romania, acting as a middleman between state-owned traders and Western capitalists. That's earned them hundreds of millions of dollars in hard currency, money they've been able to stash away outside Romania in secrecy because they're registered in Cyprus. But our investigations revealed that this mansion in Bucharest is the real heart of the operation. From here, Crescent worked the Romanian system with dazzling success because of this man. His name is Dr. Dan Voiculescu, Crescent's Bucharest manager. He's a well-connected Romanian who managed to live in capitalist comfort for years under Ceausescu. He's alleged to be the thinly disguised owner of Crescent, something he could only have got away with if his connections ran all the way to the top.
Look, the company was your idea. You made the decisions. You conducted you had the business connections in Romania that made the profits. You ran the company as you saw necessary. That sounds like ownership to me.
Here is a problem. Sounds like. Between sounds like and it is a very big difference. I was the cerveau, I was the brain of the activity of Crescent, and I was planning what is better for Crescent to do
in Bucharest, it was me. It's true.
Daniel Cotton worked for a British trading company in Bucharest. It was taken for granted in the small community of foreign-based companies that Crescent was different.
They were always able to get materials that we couldn't get from the traditional foreign trade company. They could invariably get them at a lower price than we could. Crescent seemed like a money machine to make money abroad.
For what?
Rumor was always that it was Ceausescu's company. He was the only one that could have enough power to actually give them the power that they had.
You find these accusations from the mouths of my competitors. It's not true.
During the 80s, you accumulated hundreds of millions, tens of millions of dollars. Well, where did it go?
This money are in Crescent Cyprus accounts. All this money, the net profits, are in Crescent Cyprus accounts.
What is the company worth now?
I don't know, that is a secret? Normally, if it is a secret, I don't tell you.
Did any of your profits, can you tell me?
What?
If any of your profits found their way into the special accounts of the Ceausescu regime?
No, sir.
Not a penny?
Not a penny.
For the Canadian investigators, there was a simple way to recapture the hidden wealth. Pass laws to seize the assets of companies like Crescent. But nothing happened. Then a curious turn of events. The Romanians suddenly lost interest in the investigation. Crescent remains immune from official scrutiny.
I only know that I have not read anything that would indicate that assets were seized or that bank accounts were discovered, but...
I'm tempted to draw a sort of an athletic analogy. I mean, you threw them the ball,
yes,
and they either dropped it or just went to the dugout with it.
Well, that's true, but we were only engaged to throw the ball. We threw the ball, and it's now in their court.
Switzerland. Early on, the Romanians asked a Swiss lawyer to talk to the custodians of the Swiss banking system about secret accounts there. The normally tight-lipped bankers were cooperative, but about a year ago, they too noticed a sudden loss of interest by Bucharest. Jörg Kiesler handled the Ceausescu file in the Swiss Justice Ministry.
We found some documents pertaining to some accounts in Basel, but they just didn't follow it up.
Did they give any reason for letting it drop like that?
No, it was just that they should have sent us additional information and they never did it.
Initially, the government created a high-powered committee of bureaucrats to find the missing money. Then a little over a year ago, they transformed that committee into an official government commission with offices in this villa, which is owned by the army, which now seems to be empty. Curiously, the zeal for finding Ceausescu's hidden piggy bank seems to have wilted. The original investigators have moved on to other pursuits, and the people who launched the treasure hunt with such enthusiasm now don't even want to talk about it anymore. The Romanian government might not want to talk about the money, but others do. Romania now has a relatively free press, and even one crusading newspaper, Romania Libera. The editors of Romania Libera have become deeply suspicious that there's an official cover-up in progress. The editor-in-chief is Petre Bacanu.
It's more than a year and a half since the commission was set up, and we've heard nothing. Their activities are secret, and there has been no report. From what we know,